Hello ladies and gentlemen, once again this is Jeremy Smith, Photographer the Great. About a year ago we took a look at Sony's RX100. The RX100 was a great camera, very small, lightweight camera, very fast lens, 1-inch sensor, just all around very good. Not long ago after that, Sony came out with a camera called the RX100 Mark II. On the RX100 Mark II they gave us a slightly revised version of that same lovely 1-inch sensor. And they also gave us a hot shoe as well as Wi-Fi built in. I didn't really feel like that camera was enough of an upgrade to really talk about, so I decided to skip over it. However, presently there is now the new Sony RX100 Mark III. The Mark III is still using the same 1-inch sensor from the RX100 Mark II, so it has the same revisions and everything. On this model though, they decided to remove the hot shoe, and instead this camera has an electronic viewfinder, which we'll look at in just a moment. And for me, this is the one thing that I was looking for in a camera that was this small, is still to have something with very good image quality, something with a great lens, but something with a viewfinder. This is something that is absolutely unheard of in other cameras like this. Not even the uber expensive Nikon Coolpix A that we looked at even longer ago, not even that one had a electronic viewfinder. So I was extremely excited to see this on this camera. As a matter of fact, whenever it first was announced, I didn't even notice that it had that electronic viewfinder. I just noticed that it had a lens now that covers an effective range from 24 to 70 with an f-stop of 1.8 on the wide end and 2.8 on the long end. So I was so excited about the lens, I didn't even notice the electronic viewfinder until later. This camera also has Wi-Fi built in, which allows you to run several different apps. And yes guys, I promise, I have not forgot about it. I will still be making a Wi-Fi video for Sony. I know I've made a Wi-Fi video for Nikon and for Canon, but yes, I will be making one for Sony as well. So yeah, this camera uses the same Wi-Fi options as something like the A6000 that we looked at not long ago. So it is possible to install apps on the camera to be able to send photos wirelessly, and also to be able to control the camera remotely as well. This one also supports near-field communications. So in a future video we will be taking a look at all those Wi-Fi options. But for the time being, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the camera itself. The first thing that I found very impressive about this camera is its lens. The RX100 Mark II and the original RX100 had a lens that was an effective 28 to 100 millimeters. And the f-stop range on those cameras was between f1.8 at the wide end and f4.9 at the telephoto end. This camera has a lens that has an effective range from 24 to 70 millimeters, so you do sacrifice a little bit of telephoto reach. But the good news is, this camera's f-stop range is f1.8 at the wide end, and it still maintains a fast aperture of f2.8 at 70 millimeters. So all in all, I think the extra 30 millimeter difference in telephoto is worth having the extra low light capability. According to Sony, this is also the first time that any camera manufacturer has managed to successfully bond together two aspherical elements. So that's something else that I found was pretty cool. Taking a look at the back of the camera, you'll notice that we have a very nice LCD screen. The Sony RX100 Mark II brought about the movable screen. However, on the RX100 Mark II, we could only do an upward movement of 90 degrees. This camera right here is much more selfie friendly because its movable LCD can actually go up and go to a 180 degree view. So yeah, you can see how that makes things much easier. If you do desire to shoot any selfies with your RX100, that's a very worthy improvement. This LCD screen also features Sony's White Magic LCD technology, which, just like the one on the RX100 Mark II, basically Sony incorporates some white pixels into the display as well. So basically you get a little bit more contrast and a little bit more vibrance. It also makes the display a little bit easier to see whenever you're shooting in bright lighting conditions. However, the biggest news on this camera is the fact that we now have an electronic viewfinder. And this is something that makes me so very happy. How this works is, we just have the little finder switch here. Once you push this down, the viewfinder pops up, and then you simply pull it out here.
It's a very, very high quality OLED type viewfinder, and it automatically switches on whenever you raise it to your eye, and the LCD goes off, as you can see. Very, very nice. This is a much better option than having the hot shoe on the RX100 Mark II. Since this viewfinder is located where the flash is, or sorry, where the flash was on the RX100 Mark II, they've decided to put the flash in the middle now on this one, and then your viewfinder is where the flash used to be. You can even do the whole unofficial bounce thing like you can on a few other Sony models with the flash. Very, very high quality, and it does power the camera off whenever you close it like that. And if you bring it up like this, the camera comes back on. So very, very nice. Just like the original Sony RX100 and the RX100 Mark II, we still have our same control interface. So if you want to be able to change f-stop or anything like that, you can rotate this dial. I'm shooting this camera in manual mode right now. So as I rotate that front dial, I'm changing my f-stop. And then I have a dial back here to change my shutter speed. So very, very intuitive layout. It's actually much easier to use than a lot of DSLRs. If we hit our function button right here, we can bring up another menu, which gives us even more options. So we've got some options for focus and exposure compensation, etc. One of the coolest things that I noticed about this camera is that we have an ND filter now. So if we turn that on, the ND filter actually cuts 3 stops of light. So if you desire to use a wider aperture outdoors, or especially if you decide to do anything with video, having a built-in 3-stop ND makes a huge, huge difference. Speaking of video, another thing about this camera that's nice is that Sony has updated their video codec. So unlike the previous cameras that used AVC HD, which was good for up to 28 megabits per second, this newer camera has a new format, and the new format allows for you to be able to record at up to 50 megabits per second. The new format is called XAVC S, which, yeah, more alphabet soup. But anyways, it is nice to have a higher bitrate for video. The other thing is, too, we also have an uncompressed HDMI output as well, which is also very, very nice. And as far as batteries go, battery life is actually down a little bit over the previous model, and that probably has a lot to do with the new electronic viewfinder. So you'll get about 320 shots per charge out of this one, whereas the previous RX100 Mark II was around 350. If we look at the ports on this camera, we'll realize that they're pretty much in the exact same spot that they were at on the RX100 Mark II. So over here on this side, you'll notice that we have our HDMI, which, as I just mentioned, is a clean HDMI output, and it's a micro connector type. And then we have our USB multi-interface right up here. The USB port on this camera also supports all the charging. At first, I wasn't quite happy about that design, but I must admit I am warming up to it a little bit. In the past, I've been very, very used to having a separate plug-in charger for the battery, but because of the wide array of portable battery packs these days to charge like cell phones and other devices, it can be very, very easy to charge this on the go. So I am kind of warming up to the idea. Down at the bottom, of course, we have our battery compartment as well as our memory card slot. So all in all, very, very nice package. I will leave you guys with a little bit of video that I shot with this camera so you guys can kind of see. I shot it in extremely low light at the wedding I just attended, and the camera did really, really well. The audio also sounds good. As more time goes on, I'll definitely have a little bit more time to play with this camera and report back. If there's anything that you guys would like to see me do with this camera, write me in the comments below, and I will do my best to make a video to show you guys what you want to see. Until next time, this is Jeremy Smith, Photog J the Great, signing off.